parameters. So important methods and its method parameters. Of Odata web services. So here, let me just navigate through that. Those who did not receive server access, you'll get that access today. So here in SEGW, you can see if I go to DPC extension class, all various methods will be available for implementing the code. As I told you, first method here is like every entity set contains CRUD queue methods. But if you closely observe, each method inside this DPC extension class contains some method parameters. For example, if I select get entity, and if I go to parameter list, then you'll get list of parameters here. Some are importing and some are exporting. So the total data transfer, the data transfer from front-end application to back-end OData service depends on how you use these parameters. To accept input from front-end, we can use importing parameters. To send the output to the front-end, we have to use exporting parameters. And you can write whichever ABAP logic you want inside these methods. So suppose if I go to get entity set method, this method also contains some parameters here. Some are importing and you can see some are exporting. If I go back to, for example, update entity, it contains some method parameters here. You can see some are importing and some are exporting. So if you take, for example, create entity, it has its own parameters. Some are importing for accepting input, some are used for sending the output. And not only CRUD queue methods, you can see here, for example, generic methods like execute action. It's a generic method. So if I go to parameter list, you'll get some importing parameters and you'll get some exporting parameters. Similarly, if I go to, for example, create deep entity here, create deep entity, it also contains some parameters here, like some are importing and some are exporting. So every method of Odata ABAP service contains method parameters. So method parameters mainly are of two types with respect to UI5 theory. With respect to UI5 theory, method parameters are mainly of two types here. One is like importing parameters. Second category is exporting parameters. So let me give one simple diagram. So when you deal with methods, so there will be UI5 theory front end, and there will be Odata ABAP service backend side. Which mainly contains methods with database operations here. So technically, I can say so from front end side, we need to pass input and we need to get the output. Whenever you write any Odata service level functionality, first you need to consider what type of input is coming from front end and how to send the output to the front end. So technically in Odata ABAP service side, there will be some methods here. It contains database operations, and inside these methods, SAP has provided some method parameters. It can be a generic method or it can be a normal method, but it contains method parameters here. Like importing parameters, and there will be exporting parameters. So what you can do is you can use importing parameters in order to accept input. You can accept input by using importing parameters here. So that's how the methods are designed by SAP. You can use importing parameters for accepting input, and you can use exporting parameters in order to send output. Very simple. And whichever functionality you want to write, you can write that functionality inside these methods here by using your normal ABAP skills. So database operations you can implement here directly, or you can also call function module, RFC or a BAPI inside these methods. You can write your database operation directly, or if required, you can call function module, RFC or a BAPI from these methods. That is possible. So the main point here is accept input from front end by using importing parameters. By using importing parameters, you can accept input from the front end application and use that input to execute your database operation. And whatever output you get, and that output you can send it to the front end application by using exporting parameter here. So use importing parameters for accepting input, use exporting parameters for sending the output. Input comes from front end UI5 theory, output goes to the front end UI5 theory. And whichever logic database operation you want to implement, you implement here. Okay, so let me just highlight one basic note. Highlight here, importing and exporting parameters. So importing parameters will accept input from front-end application, UI5 or it can be theory. Exporting parameters will send outputs to the front-end application, UI5 or theory. So that means I can simply say that method parameters are responsible for data transfer between SAP Odata service and the front-end application. So method parameters, they're responsible for data transfer between UI5 Fiori front-end app and backend Odata web service. So we are going to discuss all 10 methods. In the future, we are going to implement one by one. But let me give the list of all the parameter names and the behavior of those parameters. So they're responsible for data transfer between front-end app and backend OData service. So the first method, let me highlight here. So each entity set, as I told you, it contains some methods. First, let me go with get entity method here. So you can see if I go to get entity method, for example, we are not writing any code practically today. From next session, we are going to do it practically. But today we'll try to focus on this method parameters. For example, if I use get entity contains parameter list here. One of the most important parameter is, you can see IT key tab here. You can use IT key tab for accepting input, or you can use IO tech request context for accepting input. And if you want to send the output, you have to use ER entity, that is most important here. IO tech request context is for accepting input. You can also use IT key tab for accepting input, and you have to use ER entity for sending the output. So these are important parameters here. Okay, so let me just highlight here. First method. So get entity, this method is used to fetch single record. So you need to write the logic in this method. Based on some input, you can expect a single record as part of output. So this method contains select statement mainly. Ultimately, you should get single record with that. And this method, when you design this method is specific to this one, front-end side. It contains input with form and output also with form. In that scenario, you have to use get entity method. So this get entity method is recommended if the front end is expecting input through form and output also with a form. So both input and output will be in the form of a form. It can be a simple form. So in that situation, get entity method implementation is recommended. So what all logic you want to write in OData service, that you should write it by keeping front-end application in mind. What front-end is passing and what front-end is expecting output. So based on that, the methods has to be decided, because SAP has designed the methods in that manner. So this method contains two important parameters. One is like IT key tab. IT key tab is one of the important parameter, and then ER entity is another important parameter. So here, let me save this. Okay, let me copy this template. So say suppose when you are implementing get entity method, each entity set, there is get entity method. So when you're implementing the code inside this method, you have to ultimately fetch single record through this. So inside this method, as I told you, there will be IT key tab and ER entity. So these two are important parameters of get entity method, and whichever logic you want. For example, here, this is to fetch single record. So you can directly write your select query, or you can call your RFC function module or a BAPI to fetch that record. So this database operation you can directly write, or you can access RFC BAPI. That all depends. But ultimate goal is same. So in this case, get entity is going to pass inputs. The input will be in the form of a form. The front end will pass some input. That input is expected through a form here in general. Form input field, something like that. And that input is captured by using IT key tab parameter here. Arrow marks indicates the data flow. So IT key tab will accept input coming from front end screen into Odata service. So you can use this IT key tab for executing your select query. And you can send the output by using ER entity to the front end. Very simple. That's how this method is designed. Take input from IT key tab and send the output using ER entity. So that means you can use ER entity that is responsible for sending the output here. So, but output is also expected in this case in the form of a simple form. So input is in the form of form, output is also in the form of a form. In that case, get entity method is recommended. And it is recommended to deal with a single record. That's how you need to write your logic. So all business scenarios and all those things will remain same like your normal ABAP. There is nothing new in business scenario. But you should understand the data flow between front end and back end. Accordingly, you have to write your normal ABAP statements in your Odata ABAP service. Okay, so input comes from front end. It is taken care by IT key tab. Write your select query here and send the output by using ER entity to the front end. Very simple. Okay, this is about get entity method implementation. Let me write it here. IT key tab will accept input key field values. Value or a collection of values here. Ultimately, it will accept input in the form of key field values from front-end application. It can be done by using UI5 or Fiori. And ER entity, this will send output record to the front-end application. Can be UI5 or Fiori. One will accept input key field values from front end, another will send output record to the front end. So these two are important parameters of get entity method. So it's a normal ABAP code. You can write it here for fetching single record. It's a normal ABAP statement you can write. You can apply conditions, validations, that's up to you. It all depends. But this is the most important thing that you need to remember if you are coming from ABAP background. So business scenario wise, there won't be any special scenario in theory. All the normal ABAP scenarios for SD, MM, HR, finance, controlling, etc. Those business scenarios remain same. Only thing is the screens are going to change here. Okay, so let me go to the next method, that is get entity sets. So this method is used to fetch collection of records or n number of records based on some inputs. And this method contains select query, that is to fetch n records here. And this get entity set method implementation is recommended if input is form but output is table. Front-end side contains input with a form and output with, for example, it can be list, or it can be table, or it can be chart, or micro chart, or multi combo box, etc. So front-end side input can be passed through form and output is expected on list, table, chart, microchart, multi-combo box. In that situation, get entity set method is recommended. So each method is designed for special purpose. So input is in the form of form through filters, and you can send output with these screen elements: list, table, chart, microchart, multi-combo box, etc. And this method contains method parameters, like 5 important parameters. So one of the parameter is IV filter string. IV filter string. The next parameter is IV search string. Then IT filter select options. IT filter select options. And IO tech request context. So these are the important parameters for accepting inputs for get entity set method. For sending the output, you have to use ET entity set. ET entity set is responsible for sending the output to the front end. So first 4 parameters are for accepting input from front end. ET entity set is for sending the output to the front end. So let me give that one simple diagram here. Let me take this template. So if you are implementing code in entity set based get entity set method, let me just highlight this. So this get entity set method contains some parameters, like as I told you, IV filter string, IV search string, IT filter select options, and IO tech request context. In different situations, we use different input, but in general, all these things are for accepting input. And here you can write your select query directly, or you can call function module RFC or a BAPI, which internal content select query. And if you want to send output, output is mandatory here. For get entity set method, output you have to send it by using et entity set parameter. So here you can write your select query to fetch collection of records. So input is coming from front end. Input will be basically in the form of a form from front end. That input is captured by using all these various parameters here. Input coming from front end, input can be in different forms, but input coming from front end is captured by these 4 important parameters. After executing your select query, you can send your output by using et entity set here. Et entity set will send output to the front end. And this output can be in different elements, like you can display output in list, table, chart, microchart, multi-combo box, multi-input, etc. Input can be list, table, chart, microchart, etc. So based on this, you have to decide your method. So what exactly front end contains, based on that, the method implementation is decided. You can't use one method for every requirement. Each method is specially designed by keeping front end application in mind. So that is how the mapping has been done between front end and back end by the framework. The most important is input coming from form is captured by these 4 different parameters. Execute your select query and send your output by using et entity set to the front end. So in this case, the output can be displayed in various screen elements: list, tables, charts, microcharts. That is how this method is designed. Okay, so let me just highlight this before we implement. From next session onwards, we are going to implement each method in each separate session. So all these first 4 parameters, it will accept input from front-end application. But app can be UI5 or Fiori. And et entity set is the only parameter that is mainly responsible, and it will send output records to the front-end application, UI5 or Fiori. The behavior remains same. It can be UI5 front-end or it can be Fiori front-end. But the Odata service functionalities, behavior, and the parameters, it remains same. Okay, let me save this. This is get entity set method. Now let me go to the next method, that is entity set based create entity method. So this method is used to insert data, and this method contains 2 important parameters. One is like I think IO data provider. You can see here there is create entity. One of the main parameter is IO data provider. This is important. And ER entity is another important parameter. One is for importing, another is for exporting. Okay, so IO data provider and ER entity. So how this method will behave? Let me just give some basic idea. Let me take this template. So say suppose if you are implementing code in get entity set based create entity method. Create entity is a method. You are writing the code inside this method. So this method basically contains IO data provider. It can capture entire record coming from front end. ER entity, that's not mandatory to send output, but if you want to send any output, you can use ER entity. So here, IO data provider will accept input record from the front end. And you can implement insert statement here. Or the same insert statement, if you want, you can call it through function module, RFC or a BAPI. But ultimately, it should have an insert functionality here inside create entity method. So input comes from front end, that entire input record. Entire input record is captured by front end application. From front end, input record comes to this one, IO data provider. The input record coming from front end is captured by using IO data provider parameter inside create entity method. And you can execute your insert statement. If you want to send any output, you can send output by using ER entity parameter. So if you want to send any output, you can send it by using ER entity parameter. You can execute your insert statement here, send output if you want. That will be output record. But displaying the output record is not mandatory here in this case, because this is designed mainly for insert functionality. Sending the output is not really mandatory. So input record coming from front-end UI5 query is captured by using IO data provider parameter. Execute your insert statement. In case if you want to send output record back to the front end, then you can use ER entity for sending the output record. Okay, so let me just highlight this. This is create entity method. Let me write that IO data provider. This will accept input record from front end application. And ER entity will send output record back to the front end. And the UI5 or Fiori. Now, similarly, there is another method, entity set based update entity method. I'm just giving the overview of all these methods so that we can start implementing by using these parameters. So this update entity method also contains the same parameters, IO data provider and ER entity. But instead of using insert statement, you can use update statement here. So this method is used to update data, and this method contains same two important parameters. One is IO data provider, another is ER entity. The same parameters are applicable and the behavior is same. The only thing is, instead of using insert statement, you have to use update statement. But the parameters remain same. The behavior of these parameters also remains same. That means IO data provider will accept updated record. IO data provider will accept updated record coming from front-end application. And ER entity, you will send output record back to the front-end application. So that means the same story here. Entity set based update entity method. So we are talking about entity set based update entity method. So this method also contains same parameters as create entity method. But let me give a separate diagram here. This also contains IO data provider. And here you can write your update statement. Update data, or you can use update statement inside function module, RFC, or a BAPI, and you can access that inside this update entity method. And the output can be transferred by using ER entity parameter here. In this case, the updated input record comes from front end. It's basically input record in general, but that's an updated record. But updated record comes from front end application to Odata service. And Odata service will accept that updated record by using IO data provider parameter. You can execute your update statement, or you can call RFC BAPI or a function module to do that update operation. And your output can be transferred by using ER entity to the front end. So this is going to send output record to the front end. So this arrow marks plays an important role in understanding the data flow. So each method contains method parameters for data transfer between UI5 Fiori frontend and Odata ABAP service backend. Okay, let me just, okay, I've already written that statement here. Let me just save this diagram. This is update entity method. Now there is one more method as part of entity set, that is delete entity method. So this delete entity method is basically to delete the record, nothing more than that. So this method is used to delete data, and this method contains one important parameter, that is enough. delete data, one parameter is enough. That is IT key tab. IT key tab, that's an important parameter. If you want, you can use one special method inside this method, that is set header. Inside delete entity method, you can access set header method to send some output message to the front end. Okay, let me explain here. Same template I'm using. In this case, entity set based delete entity method. We are focusing on this method. So this method contains one main method parameter, that is like IT key tab. IT key tab is a most important method parameter here. You can implement your delete statement. You can implement your delete statement, or you can call function module, RFC, or a BAPI to deal with the delete statement. And if you want to send any message, whether the record is deleted or not, in case I want to send a message to the front end, then in the Odata service level, you can access one special method, that is set header method. So that's set header, it can send message key and the message value. That means message text, whatever. So by using delete entity method, you can access set header method internally so that you can send output message key and message text to the front end, whether the record is deleted or not, something like that. So ultimately here you are going to write a delete statement, or you can do the same thing through function module, RFC, or a BAPI. But the input values comes from front end application here. Input key field values, or it can be collection of values. So ultimately the input key field values are captured by using IT key tab parameter here. And you can execute your delete statement inside this. Execute your delete statement, or you can call RFC, BAPI, or whatever. But you can use set header. Ultimately, set header method is to send output message back to the front end. So you can send output message, and that output message we are going to display in the front end by using some message box. And message box internally contains success type of message, error message, information, warning, the different types of messages in the front end to display different types of messages. But ultimately, message box will display success message, error message, warning message, information, etc. You can display here. So input key field values comes from front end into IT key tab standard parameter. Execute delete statement based on that and send output message by using set header. You can display output message in message box in the front end. Okay, so just remember this. This is like delete entity method. So IT key tab will accept input key field value or values from front end application. It can be UI5 or Fiori. Set header is going to pass some message. So set header, by providing some message text, it will send output message to the front end application. Set header can be accessed from any method. It can be all the above methods. If you want to send any output message to front end from all the above methods, you can use set header method internally. Ultimately, it will send output message to front end, can be UI5 or Fiori. Set header method is an internal method. You can use it in delete entity method. You can use it in update entity, create entity, get entity set, as well as get entity. It's a generic method here. Set header is a generic method. Whenever you want to send any output message to front end, you can use that from any of the above CRUD methods. Okay, let me go with the next method, that is create stream method. Create stream. So this create stream method, this method is used to deal with file upload functionality. This method is to deal with file upload functionality here. And this method contains below parameters. I think there are three important parameters. One is IT key tab, and then next one is IV slug. IV slug. Then the most important is IS media resource. IS media resource. So this create stream method, we are going to use it to deal with file upload functionality. And it contains three important parameters. One is IT key tab, IV slug, and IS media resource. So let me give one important diagram here for create stream method. Let me copy this template. So here we are discussing about create stream method. Create stream is one of the method in Odata service. So this create stream method, as I told you, it contains three important parameters. One is IT key tab. Then next one is IV slug. Then third one is IS media resource. IS media resource. So these are three important parameters of create stream method: IT key tab, IV slug, IS media resource. So this is to deal with file upload functionality. So what happens is, from front end application, we are going to pass input key field value. It can be collection of values. And from front end, we are going to pass something like input, file name, file type, file content. From front end, we are going to pass input, file name, input, file type, input, file content. Then only you can upload that file content to the backend. For that, we are going to use input file uploader screen element here. In the front end, we are going to use input with file uploader screen element. So that is going to pass input file name, and it is going to pass input file type, and it is going to pass input file content from front end to the backend Odata service. So here IT key tab is going to accept input key field values coming from front-end app. Input key field values coming from front-end app is captured by IT key tab parameter here. And in the front end, there will be file uploader screen element. File uploader will allow you to provide file name, file type, and file content. So this input file uploader, when you use file uploader screen element, technically what happens is the file name can be passed to IV slug parameter here. It can be passed to IV slug. The file name is passed to this IV slug. That is for holding the file name. And this input file type is captured by IS media resource. And input file content is also captured by IS media resource here. So this IS media resource internally contains two options. IS media resource is one of the parameter. It internally contains two options. One is MIME type, another is value. MIME type is for file type and value is to deal with file content. So IS media resource is one of the parameter. It internally allows two options. One is MIME type, another is value. MIME type is to deal with file type, value is to deal with file content. So I can say input file type is captured by IS media resource parameter here into MIME type. And input file content is captured by IS media resource with value. So IS media resource is a most important parameter. It is going to hold the input file type and input file content. From front end, it is going to capture into Odata service. File type is captured by using MIME type. File content is captured by using value. Ultimately, both will come through IS media resource parameter. So in the front end, we are going to use file uploader screen element to deal with that. Okay, when we do it practically, you'll get more clarity. Don't worry now. And here what we can do is by using all this, by using input key field, by using file name, by using file type and file content, we can upload the file content to the backend service, a backend database tables if required, or you can call BAPI RFC function module. By using input, file name, file type, file content, we can upload that file to the backend tables if required, or you can call RFC BAPI function module. Let me write that simple statement here. Here you can upload the file, or you can also directly call function module, RFC, or a BAPI to deal with file upload functionality. So input key field value will reach IT key tab. Through file uploader, file name will reach IV slug. Through file uploader, file type will reach IS media resource MIME type. And through file uploader, file content will reach IS media resource value. Then you can take all these things and upload the file to the backend tables. Okay, so when we do it practically, you'll get more clarity. As of now, just remember this diagram. This is create stream method. So let me write that IT key tab here. IT key tab will accept input key field value, or it can be collection of values coming from front-end application. It can be UI5 or Fiori. And IV slug will accept input file name from front-end application. IV slug will capture, that means it will accept input file name from the front-end application. IS media resource, this also will accept input file type and input file content from front-end application. It can be UI5 or Fiori. IS media resource will accept input file type and input file content. Both it will capture from the front-end application, from file uploader screen element. So that's how this method can be used. Create stream method can be used for file upload functionality. Okay, so let me go with the next method. Okay, let me save this. Create stream. Now let me go with get stream method here. If you go to this, here you'll find, say suppose, for example, we're talking about create stream. So here you can see there is create stream method. If I go to parameter list, in parameter list, you can see IT key tab is one of the input parameter. And you can see IS media resource is another input parameter. And IV slug is another input parameter. All these are importing parameters. It will accept input in different forms. IV slug, IT key tab, IS media resource. These are the three important parameters of create stream method. Okay, let me go with another method, that is get stream. You can see get stream. We are going to implement this for file download functionality. For get stream, you can see there is a parameter list. One is IT key tab, that is important. Another is ER stream. IT key tab for accepting input, ER stream for sending the output. So, okay, let me write it here. Get stream. This method is used to deal with file download functionality. And this method contains two important parameters. One is like IT key tab, another is ER stream. So IT key tab and ER stream. So let me go with the diagram. So one is get stream here. Get stream is a method. Trying to focus on this. So this method has some two important parameters. Let me just highlight. One is IT key tab. And the next one is ER stream. So these two are important parameters. Inside this, you can deal with file download functionality. You can deal with file download functionality here. Or you can do the same thing by calling function module RFC or ABAPI. So from front-end application, we are going to get input key field. Can be value or collection of values. So input key field values coming from front-end UI5 theory will reach IT key tab parameter here. Based on that input IT key tab, you can download the file from the backend database table. From backend database table, we are going to get that file content, writing that logic somewhere here. And whatever file content, file type, you get it, that you can send it by using ERStream parameter here. You can send file name, file type, and the file content to the front end by using the same parameter ERStream. So ERStream is responsible for sending three things here. One is like, this is file download functionality. So you will get output file name, you get output file type, and you'll get output file content. That's most important here. The file content can be a text file, a BMP file, any image file, PDF file, video file, or it can be audio file. Everything you're going to experience. The output file content can be any type of file, text file, image files, PDF file, video file, audio file. It supports all file formats in this scenario. While uploading the file also, you can upload video file, audio file, PDF, image file, text file, you can upload any file. So similarly, you can download any file here. So this ERStream is responsible for sending output file name. You can send output file type and output file content to the front-end application. You can send output file name, file type, and file content by just using ERStream parameter from getStream Odata service method. Okay, so let's save this. This is getStream method. IT key tab will accept input key field, value or values from front-end application, can be UI5 or Fiori app. And ERStream will send output file name, output file content, and output file type. The front-end application, it can be UI5 or Fiori. So ERStream is responsible. It will send output file name, output file type, and output file content, everything to the front-end application. Then you can show that file in the front-end app. Okay, let me save this. Then let me go to the next method, that is create deep entity method. That is create a deep entity method. So this method is used to insert multiple records. You can use this method in order to insert multiple records. Or you can use the same method with slight changes. It can be used to insert header plus item records simultaneously. You can insert multiple records. With slight change, you can also deal with inserting header plus item records simultaneously. So it can do the same job. It can do the same method can do two different things here. Direct methods, that means directly multiple records you can insert, or you can insert header plus items combination. Create deep entities, one method. It can do two types of functionalities: inserting multiple records, plain records, or you can insert header plus item records with a combination simultaneously. And this method contains two important parameters. One is like IO data provider and ER deep entity. Okay, let me just highlight here. Okay, so we're talking about something like create deep entity method. So this create deep entity method mainly contains two parameters. One is IO data provider, and another parameter is ER deep entity. And this IO data provider, you can accept input, and ER deep entity, you can send output. But what you can do is inside this method implementation, you can implement your insert statement to insert multiple records. Or you can also update multiple records. That's also possible. Or you can insert header plus item records simultaneously as a combination. Or you can do the same job by directly calling a function module, RFC, or a BAPI. All depends. You can insert multiple records, or you can update multiple records also. You can insert header plus item records as a combination simultaneously. Or else you can do these activities through RFC, BAPI, or a function module. If the functionality is already available, then you can access that function module, RFC, or a BAPI. So the most important thing is from front-end side, there will be a screen, something like this. Form. There will be a form with, for example, there can be table. So form will accept input header record here, something like this. You can accept input header record. Plus, you can use a table. That also, table need not be always for output. Table can be used even for input purpose. So in this case, you can accept input item records or collection of records. So table can be used mainly for display output purpose, but that's not mandatory that it should be only for output. Table can also be used for accepting input as well from the user. You can accept collection of records from the end user. So in this case, I can say there can be a screen, and that screen can have a form for accepting input record, and you can use table for accepting item records. So everything, header record will come to this IO data provider. That's how you are going to write the logic. And item records also will come to this IO data provider. So header record coming from front end will reach IO data provider parameter. And item records also will reach the same IO data provider parameter. That's how we are going to write the functionality. So it can be a combination like this. So let me use plus operator because it's a combination in this case. So you can send header record as input, as well as you can send item records as input, both as simultaneously to IO data provider parameter. And you can insert those records, or you can update those records. And if you want to send any output, you can send that output by using ER deep entity. So here, this output, if you want to send any output, output can be transferred by using ER deep entity. But that is not mandatory here, it's optional. In case if you want to send any output, you can send through ER deep entity. Okay, so let me save this. This is about create deep entity method. Write a simple note. IO data provider will accept input header record plus input item records. Simultaneously from front-end app. Can be UI5 or Fiori app. That's the job of IO data provider parameter. And ER deep entity, it can send output to the front end. UI5 or Fiori. But that's not mandatory to send output, it's optional. You need not send that output. It's not mandatory. So it's basically optional. Now, not only that, there is another method that is get expanded entity method. So these two methods basically create deep entity and get expanded entity. These two methods are opposite in terms of functionality. So get expanded entity method is used to fetch header plus item records simultaneously. It is to fetch header plus item records simultaneously. That's the purpose of get expanded entity method. And this method contains 4 important parameters. One is IT key tab, another is IO tech request context, and then IO expand. So these are 3 parameters for accepting input from front end. Ultimately, all these things are for accept input from front end application. You can accept input from front end app UI5 Fiori by using 3 different types of parameters. IT key tab, IO tech request context, and IO expand. And this is important, ER entity. So ER entity is a most important parameter. Okay, let me check. Just for confirmation, let me check. Get expanded entity. Yeah, it contains ER entity. This is for outputs. This will send output header record plus item records simultaneously to front-end application. It can be UI5 or Fiori. So ER entity, that's a parameter responsible for sending both output header record as well as output item records, everything simultaneously to the front end. That's how you can use this method implementation. Okay, let me just highlight here. This is like get expanded entity method. So get expanded entity method, it contains IT key tab and IO tech request context. Then IO expand. So all three things are basically responsible for accepting input coming from front end. And here you can write your select query. You can write select query to fetch header record. You can fetch header record by writing your select query. And you can fetch, you can write another select query to fetch its corresponding item records. You can fetch header record as well as you can fetch item records, corresponding item records for that so-and-so header record. And what you can do is finally you can combine header plus items. You finally combine header plus items, and those header plus items you have to send it to the front end by using ER entity parameter. So accept input, write select query to fetch header record, another select query to fetch item records, corresponding item records, and finally combine header plus items, and those header plus item records as a combination you can send it to the front end by using ER entity parameter. Okay, so make it like this. This is like just input comes from front end and you can accept by using these different parameters. Here you can execute your functionality. Select fetch header record, select query item records, and finally combine header plus item records. That's how you need to write the logic here. Finally combine header plus item records. And that final output as a combination header plus items, you can send it to the front end by using ER entity parameter. So here output header record you can display plus output item records if you want you can display as a combination. Let me just add it here. Output header record and output item records. Everything you can display here in the front end just by using one parameter, that is ER entity. Okay, so let me save this. This is get expanded entity method. Write a simple note. Okay, it's already written. Get expanded entity. The parameters note is already given here. Now let me go to the next method. That is, I think there is execute action method. That's also one of the important method. It's outdated method, but it's used in various several older applications. Execute action method, basically this is outdated, but this was used in older applications of UI5, so it's better to know that. Execute action method. So this method is used to deal with simple operations, and this method contains important parameters. One is IV action name, then IT parameter, and then I think ER data. So these are three important parameters of execute action method: IV action name, IT parameter, and ER data. So let me just give that. Execute action, that's a method. So in execute action method, there are three important things: IV action name, IT parameter, and here you can write your simple insert statement, or you can write your select statement here, but it should deal with simple operations. Or you can do the same thing by calling function module, RFC, or a BAPI. And then if you want to send output, then you have to use ER data parameter here. So from front end, we are going to trigger. From front end, we are going to trigger call function statement, that is by providing function name. So by providing function name here, we are going to trigger call function statement by providing function name. So that function name of the function is captured by using IV action name parameter here. We'll just capture which function is triggered in the front end. If the function name is X, it will capture X. If it is Y, it will capture Y. So it will just capture the name of the function which is triggered in the front end. IV action name will just capture the name of the function triggered from the front end application. And not only that, I can say input values we can pass, one or many values. So those input values are captured by using IT parameter here. So this IT parameter will accept input values from front-end application. You can execute your insert statement or select statement, which deals with a simple operation, and the final output you can send by using ER data parameter. So ER data will send output to the front-end application. So IV action name will capture function name. That's it. IT parameter will capture input values. Execute your database functionality here and send output by using ER data to the front-end application. So let me just highlight here. This is about execute action method. This method is outdated, but still it's used in older applications, better to know. So IV action name will accept, or I can say it will capture the name of the function triggered in front-end application. Can be UI5 or Fiori. IV action name will capture name of the function triggered from front-end application. IT parameter, this will accept input values from front-end application. And ER data, there's a third important parameter. This will send output data to the front-end application. It can be UI5 or Fiori. So these are three important parameters of execute action method. We are going to implement this also, even though it is outdated, but for knowledge purpose, we are going to implement this as well. So all these 10 methods, we are going to discuss from next session onwards in detail. Today, I'll not clarify any doubt because each method we are going to discuss in detail. At that level, you can ask your doubts, I'll clarify. But today, I'm not going to clarify any doubt. I'm going to ignore it because every method will be discussed in detail. At that level, we can focus on the doubts as well, method by method. Okay, so let me save this. And these are the methods. Let me just segregate here. There are 10 important methods. Just put it here. Each method we are going to implement step by step, practically. At that level, I'll clarify the respective doubts of each method. If I take up doubts now, it will create a lot of confusion. So sometimes it is better to ignore. We just highlight here.